Hello and welcome to episode 95 of Webflail. I'm your host Jack, your failure connoisseur, and today my guest is Julieta Rubio. She is a front-end developer based in Argentina, and she combines her love for technology with her passion for art and design. She's just got a new portfolio out, so go check that out. That's in the bio if you want to check that. And she's got a really interesting background. She was a tour guide for a wine company in Mendoza before retraining as a growth engineer. And she worked for a company called Embeddables, building websites and embeddable tools using Webflow, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So she was working at Embeddables, learning, growing, developing, starting to get some freelance work. And then she's recently struck out on her own as a freelancer after obtaining her Webflow Partnership certification. God, that's hard to say. And now she's ready to rumble. But has it been easy? Of course not. Of course not, guys. The failures that we'll be discussing today are not discussing the payment method before taking on a new project. Oof, I can relate to that one. Not having a quick conversation with a client before making some drastic website changes. And underestimating the complexity of a migration. Julieta, welcome to Webflail.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am psyched to have you on because we met in Barcelona. How long ago was that? Over a year ago? Yeah, well over a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe, start of last year. But anyway, you were like, I'm thinking about Webflow and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And obviously you were at Embeddables then. And now you are solo writing. But before we talk about that and why you're doing that and things, what I want to know is what is your relationship with failure?
My relationship with failure. I'm a pretty positive person and I try to learn from my mistakes and just try to get the best out of them. So I would say I have a good relationship with failure. I most times don't repeat the same failure twice. So
yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the real fail.
Relationship.
Great. That sounds really healthy. I mean, I think a lot of the time when people come on the podcast, they're like, you know what? I kind of embrace failure. I just go for it. But I think there's something to be said. When you make the same mistake twice, then I think that's a real failure. You know, if like I fell off my bike and broke my arm on Tuesday, I think, it was dumb. But if I fell off in that same spot and broke my arm again, I would consider that a real fail. I mean, obviously it's a bit of a fail.
It would feel much worse.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it's dumb, but I've now learned from it. My arm's hopefully going to get stronger over the 4 weeks I've got this cast on. I'm not going to ride around Bristol city centre in the dark without lights anymore. Anyway, that's a story for another day. So now you are a freelancer. Tell me a little bit about why you made that jump after 4 years. You were clearly doing well at Embeddables to stay there that long. You were learning, you were growing, you had amazing mentors. Why change?
So I loved working at Embeddables. I had a great team. It was a very fun job. We had some awesome clients, but I wasn't just doing Webflow. I was doing a little bit of everything, I was also working at frontend. So, more into the code. And I love Webflow more than anything. So I decided to just focus 100% on it. And I made that decision to leave Embeddables, to work on my own and get clients to focus on Webflow.
But question, did you have inbound requests for work, like while you were at Embeddables, that gave you the confidence to be like, you know what, I can freelance now. Like now I've got the confidence, I've got a little bit of traction, I can do this.
Yes, I actually received a few requests for freelance work while at Embeddables, some of which were from clients we had. So that really gave me the confidence. And also my bosses were awesome in that aspect. I fully disclosed this request to them and they said, it's not a problem. You can do freelance work with these clients on your own as well. And so that also helped a lot.
Wow, that's a lot of confidence that they said, you know what? Yeah, great. Like, continue working for us. But great. If you want to do that, that's amazing. And so now you are a Webflow designer and developer, or how are you positioning yourself as a freelancer that's coming into what is now getting quite a crowded market?
So I don't feel 100% confident as a designer yet. I'm learning day by day. I'm actually taking UX, UI courses all the time to gain more confidence. So I would say I'm more of a developer, but I'm working on it, on being a designer. I use Figma. I know how to use Figma, and I have the eye for design, but I'm not 100% confident as a designer.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because when you go for a job at an agency, or at least in my experience, when I've gone for a job at an agency, they say you're either a designer or you're a developer. And you're like, oh, okay, so I don't really know, which is probably a big red flag for the agency that's looking to hire you. But then when you're a freelancer, obviously you can have a real depth of expertise in one of those two and maybe just be like, I only do this thing. But I found, depending on the size of the client, if the client is really small, they are maybe looking for someone who has a little bit more of a breadth of skills rather than someone that's got like just one depth of skill set. So it's interesting, this idea of positioning, but sorry, I cut you off there. What were you going to say?
Oh, no problem. That I think the issue is that I'm too used to clients providing the Figma designs for me, like the mockups, and I implement them. So I've never had to do a full website for a client myself, like a design. So I need to practice more this part. Of course, my portfolio, I did design it myself and build it. I'm just getting started.
Yeah, managing clients is it's like herding cats. It's hard, but I'm sure you'll do a great job because you were a tour guide, and this may sound like the weirdest random segment, but I think people that have had experience in hospitality or whatever, they're really good at the people aspect of managing a client project. And I think when people say, oh, I'm a Webflower, like you might think, okay, you know, they're really proficient at that tool. But I think the really successful freelancers, in my experience from chatting to a few of them, is that they're quite good at knowing how to push and pull and present ideas and explain the story behind their designs, you know, and development to actually get the client bought into the ideas and kind of come along with them. So I'm sure you will be great at that aspect, Julieta. You'll be good.
Thanks. Yeah, I think 100% hospitality, like working in hospitality, that does help. It really helped my communication skills, my time management skills, because I had to be, you know, taking tourists from one winery to the other. I'm based in Mendoza, by the way. So it's a wine country. I mostly did wine tours. And so it really helped my time management skills.
A crucial skill that is not talked about enough. Because when you're a freelancer, it's kind of weird. You're like a project manager and you're trying to do the design and dev, and you might not even be that confident in the design, but you're like, okay, we kind of need the designs to develop them. And it's like, you know, it's hard to navigate through that. But it sounds like you've already got a real depth of skill set there, which will set you up for success. And tell me about this Webflow Partnership certification. There might be people who are listening that are like, oh, wow, okay, I knew about the Webflow Experts program, but I didn't actually know about the Webflow Partnerships program. Is that a lead source for you? Is that just a certification? Why did you get that certification and what's it given you?
So I'm a big believer that the more certifications you get, the better for your portfolio and for, you know, to attract customers. So I got it as an extra and just to, you know, for my portfolio, for my LinkedIn profile. It's pretty easy to get it. It's out there. I think it's in the certification section in Webflow and pretty similar to the expert certification, if I'm not wrong, which I actually got. I just haven't published it yet. So I'm also a Webflow expert.
Oh, amazing.
By the way, yeah.
Amazing. But as in like, so you're not in a pool of people that are competing in a kind of directory, like being part of the Webflow Experts program? Because some people get these qualifications to actually be part of a pool of people and use that as a lead source. But that's not what the partnership program is it?
No, it's not. It's just another certification to, you know, to
social proof.
Social proof.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, great. I just wanted to check that because I do think, you know, a lot of the time people are trying to find different ways to get social proof. A lot of people are trying to get awards, for example. And I think actually certifications might be a really good stepping stone to, you know, show clients if you're starting out and be like, you know, I can actually do what I say I can do. Not just showing the website examples, but also the certifications themselves, especially for jobs on flowremote.io. I have seen some of the job requests or the job postings there, specifically asking people to show those. So I definitely think it is worth exploring that. Okay, you are now freelancing. You are in Mendoza. You are about to move to Qatar, you told me. Why Qatar? Is that for Webflow prospects? Is that for a freelance career move? Is that just a lifestyle move? Just tell me about that.
So my partner received a job offer in Qatar, and we are moving there. And I'm pretty excited because I have plans of opening my own Webflow agency in there, and just aiming to get customers in the Middle East, mostly Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. I think there's a big market there. I know that UAE has several agencies now, but Qatar, as far as I know, doesn't have any. So also looking forward to exploring that market and getting some customers in the area.
That is impressive. So you're striking out to actually go to an area that you think, wow, there's high demand, and actually, these people aren't getting serviced, and you're like, why don't I go and shake some hands?
Yeah,
in the desert. Mental. That's amazing. Good for you. And I guess also your partner is obviously on board with that. Why do you want to start an agency, just out of interest? Because you're a freelancer, you seem to be successful, you've got clients. Why do you want to grow an agency?
So I feel there's more room to grow with an agency than as a freelancer only. And I'm looking to not just be me. I want to build a team, to have a graphic designer, like a copywriter, a UX UI designer. So I want to start building a team, get more Webflow developers as well, and just gain more customers, because at the moment I have several freelance clients and I'm not so sure I can take on many more. So having an agency will allow me to receive more customers and just get more cool projects.
Okay, awesome. And so what's the ultimate goal then? If I was to say, if I'm a genie right now and I can give you whatever future vision you want, what is that?
I would say that I want a big agency in the Middle East that is not just for the Middle East, but international, based there, and that is mostly focused on startups. That's my goal for now, just helping out startups to build cool websites.
And do you have any personal goals? Like why is that the dream?
I just love Webflow and I want to focus all my energies on it. And I love no-code tools in general, but I just want to become better and better at Webflow. And yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I hope that you look back at this interview when you're, middle-aged or, 60s or whatever, and you've built this enormous agency in Qatar that services clients all over the world. And then you give me some royalties for helping you. No, I'm joking. Okay, let's dive into the failures now, because yes, you're cooking, you're going to be moving to Qatar. There's loads of good things happening in your life right now, which is great. But you've had a few stumbles along the way that you've had to learn from and overcome. So tell me about failure number one, not discussing the payment method before taking on a new project.
Oh, this was a terrible one. So a few years back, I had my first freelance client as a freelancer. It was a very big US company that I actually, I can't say much, but it was a big US company. And we had a call. They liked my work. They liked what I could offer. And they gave me a small project, a landing page to get started with. They sent the contract over. It all looked fine. We discussed how much they would pay me per hour. And I estimated it would take about 7 hours to build. Okay, I signed the contract. I got started working on it, I finished it, and let them know how much it costed. And then they sent a link to a platform to get paid. I had to fill in a form that required a tax form from the US, a social security number, and I'm not a US citizen, I'm not a US resident, I wasn't at the time. So I went back to them and told them, hey, I cannot provide this, can you give me a solution? And some context here, I was based at the time in Argentina. Here, at the time, most freelancers I knew were getting paid by either Deal, Wise, Payoneer, PayPal even. So I assumed that I would get paid in one of those ways, because they knew I was based in Argentina. They knew I was working as a freelancer, and that's how most freelancers get paid. So I went back to them and I told them, I'm sorry, I cannot provide these things. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, but you need to. This is our system. This is the only way we have to pay you. So we need a US bank account, we need your social security number, and we need you to fill in this tax form. And I kept going back and forth and telling them, explaining the situation. I'm based in Argentina. I was always based here. When we had our onboarding call, I told you I was based here. So I ended up not getting paid for my work.
Oh my God.
After
that makes me
months
so
of
angry.
Sending emails, and I wasn't able to receive my payment because they had their system and they were very inflexible. They wouldn't change it for anything in the world. So the lesson learned here is that always discuss the payment method before signing a contract. Not just how much they will pay you, but also how they will pay you. Because if they have their own system in place and that they are not flexible in how they will pay you, you won't get paid.
Yeah, but Julieta, that is a pretty extreme example. I mean, like, you would not, I don't think you're in the wrong. That's just insane that they're just like, oh yeah, sorry, you don't have a security number. Oh, that's a terrible shame. We can't pay you. What? That's insane. That drives me
So always make sure that the company you are going to work with is able to pay you abroad if you're in a different country, and how they will pay you, what platform they will use. So always discuss that before jumping into the project.
Okay, questions though. 1, why didn't you take a deposit up front? 2, I know that it's hourly pay, but did you not discuss the possibility of doing this per project price rather than hours? And then 3, in your contract, wasn't it discussed? I mean, I know that you obviously didn't have how they were going to pay you, but was there something about bank transfers or something that you could go to a lawyer and say, hey, I'm not getting paid for this. This is ridiculous.
So again, it was my first freelance job. So I was very inexperienced. I should have read the contract more in detail and made sure that this point was clarified, but it wasn't. I checked several times and no, it wasn't clarified there. I should have also been paid upfront, maybe, because it was the first project. Also, they wanted to try me out. So they wanted to pay me per hour for this first project. And then they would, if they liked my work and they could actually pay me, they would give me more.
That is
many
such
mistakes
a scam.
there, not just one. Many.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, sorry. I'm not trying to attack you at all. I'm just
no, don't worry.
But I mean, okay, lesson for anyone that's listening who's like, I'm in the start of my journey or whatever. Would you advise asking for a deposit up front to essentially check whether they are going to pay you throughout the project? Would you advise milestones? How would you advise someone now that's starting out maybe with their first projects?
I think payment upfront is the best way, but not many clients like it. I usually do milestones if I know the client. The client is referred to me by someone I know, and I usually do milestones, but payment upfront is also a good idea.
Okay, so what you're saying is...
I also think I didn't ask them to pay me upfront just because it's a very well-known company. So I thought that they wouldn't do something like this, but apparently this can happen with any company, no matter the size.
Okay, so let's just rewind. So what you're saying is, ideally, you'd want to work with people that are willing to pay you a deposit up front, whether that's 25% of the overall project fee or 50% or whatever you want, but making sure that they are actually going to pay you for the work. And if you get that money up front, then it does protect you from the work that you then do. And then milestones wise, what you're saying is maybe after the design phase, that's where the milestone 1 might be. After the development is done, that's milestone 2. So you could split up the payments into 50% up front, like as a deposit before you do any work, then 25% after the design's done, and then 25% when the actual final project is developed and delivered. Is that what you're saying in terms of how you might think about the structure of trying to get projects done now?
Yes, that's ideal.
Okay. But what you're saying is a lot of people don't want to do that So then they push back and they say, yeah, that sounds great, but actually, we're not going to be able to do that. We'd prefer to do hourly. What do you say?
So as a freelancer, I have plans. So they pay a fixed price for X amount of hours. And I also have an hourly plan. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But ideally, it's always better to have 25% or a percentage paid up front, especially if you don't know the customer yet before starting a new project.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's say I say to you, hey, Julieta, I want you to do hourly. How do you manage that? Do you use like Bonsai or something to basically like track your hours, and they can see that dashboard, so they can see how many hours you're doing on the project because you've got a little timer and it's tracking? Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. I love Bonsai. I discovered it recently and it's been so useful in that aspect. Yeah,
I'm a big fan as well. Yeah, no, it's a really useful tool. Okay, that's really interesting though that you do an hourly plan as well as a fixed price plan, and then the hourly plan. So let's say you spend 10 hours on a project, and then at the end of the month you bill them. You still haven't received any money up front, right? You just trust that after those 10 hours you're going to get paid at the end of the month. Is that right?
Yes, but the clients that I take on hourly, I've already worked with them, so they are not. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I should have clarified that I only offer the hourly plan to clients I've worked with previously.
Okay, great. I just think this is important to clarify for anyone that's listening, because I think the whole structure of getting paid for creative work is a little bit confusing. There's a lot of people that get completely burnt, just like you did. I've had a very similar situation, Julieta, where I did work for an agency, trusted I was going to get paid, didn't get paid. A different agency I work for, they had a referral fee. So you bring clients to them and then you get a kickback. Never received the kickbacks. Oh, this project price wasn't the same as what we agreed or whatever. There's like all these loopholes and you just get fucked as a freelancer a lot of the time, and you need to protect yourself. So get stuff in writing, get money up front when you can, because like working hourly on a trust basis, you think, I just get freelance work and it's really fun and I get to make creative stuff all the time. No. You need to pay your bills. You need to pay your rent. You need to get paid for what you do. And it's so, so important that you kind of protect yourself in that sense, because this properly riles me up when big companies take the piss and they just use their authority in the space as like this carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want. It drives me mental. So thank you for bringing this point up, Julieta, and thanks for clarifying how you work so that other people can learn from it as well. God, I got really angry there. Sorry about that. I'm not getting annoyed at you at all. I'm just thinking of times in the past where I haven't been paid and the money that I've lost and the money you've lost. Tell me about failure number 2, not having a quick conversation with the client before making website changes.
Yeah, so this was a fail more than once, but I've learned since then, and now I always make sure that I have the full context before starting a new task, especially if it's a new customer. So a few examples of fails that happened because of this issue. Once a customer asked me to delete all unused styles on the site, and I just, I did it the easy way without, investigating if the site had, any custom code that added any extra styles to the site that were not, by default on Webflow, any classes. I just clicked on delete, clear all unused styles, and that's it. And I got the job done. I went to the client and I told them ready. Then I realized that there were many styles, like active classes on buttons and links, that had disappeared completely from the site. So what took me 5 minutes ended up taking me like 30, because I had to go back and add all those classes. And yeah, it was a disaster, just because I didn't ask the client whether they were doing this, if they were adding any extra classes with custom code. And another issue I had because of not asking for context from the customer was that I once accidentally removed all webhooks from the site when I did a backup. That got me into a very big mess with a client. So always ask for context, always communicate with the client, ask them, hey, if I do this, will it cause any issues for you? Will it remove anything from the site that shouldn't be removed? Hey, can I delete this? Will it affect anything? It's always important to ask. the customer.
So why didn't you ask, just out of interest?
Why didn't I ask? I guess, I don't know. I was working too fast. I didn't think such a small change would break anything, but it did. I also should have QA'd more before launching. That's always QA well in detail before launching a new page or an important update.
When you do QA, how do you do it?
So if it's just one page, I start, I open the new page and I start checking all links, clicking on things, moving from up to down. Then I check tablet, mobile, just making sure that it looks good on all sizes and that everything is working correctly on all sizes. Yeah, that's how I do it. I'm not a fan of QA. I hate QAing, but it's very necessary.
I hate QA too.
What happens is that many of my customers don't QA. They just say, "Oh no, okay, push live. It's fine. It's ready." So you have to QA.
Yeah, and I had one of the worst times I've ever had with a project with an agency that I work for, and I sent it to be like, yeah, it's done. And then they just sent like the angriest reply being like, how dare you say it's done? Like, you clearly haven't checked this on like Safari, and like not even Safari. It was like the responsiveness wasn't right and stuff. And it was just
Safari has given me so many headaches.
Yeah, no, I think it has given a lot of people headaches. Something that I've learned, and I'm not sure if this is relevant for everyone at all, but like if I finish a project, or I think I finished a project, and then I go to sleep, like, finish it in the evening, leave it. Do not say it's done, because it's probably not done. But if you go to bed and then approach it the next day with fresh eyes, you see these mistakes that you might just be like once you've finished a build, you're kind of done. You're just like, cool, I just want to get this done. I could checked out. But actually, if you come back to it the next day and just spend half an hour of like fresh eye time versus 2 hours of like, oh god, I'm so done with this project. Like, if you just do it at the end of the day, I generally find that the QA is terrible and you haven't even done the QA properly, and it's not really a QA. So definitely recommend, if you have the time, to just take a beat, maybe just go sleep, go have a nap, go for a run, whatever it is, just have a break from it and then come back to it. I think it's a lot easier. Also, having a process, like a tick box process, not just being like, oh yeah, I'll just check it on like different browsers and just have a little look, and then go to PageSpeed Insights and just have a little look. Like, if you go through a QA doc on Notion and like tick everything, because then it's like proof that you can send that to the client or the agency that you're working with and be like, these are the things I've checked and they are all done. And it kind of puts pressure on you to actually do the check properly before actually just ticking it off. That's what I find anyway. Do you have any other points to add on any of the stuff I've just mentioned?
Related to QA, so sometimes when you have worked on a landing page or a new site for many, many hours, you cannot spot any issues because your eyes are too used to it. So related to what you just mentioned, it's always good to take some hours off, then go back, and then you will spot like what's missing or what is not looking 100% right. What is any link is disconnected that you didn't find before. Yeah. So always take a small break before QAing again.
Yeah. Also, if you've got a little group of friends that are Webflowers that do stuff with you, I just send it by WhatsApp and I'm just like, hey, can you just have a quick look at this and just double check that I'm not being a complete idiot? I definitely recommend a better process of like going through that checklist, like I mentioned and stuff, and do your due diligence yourself. Don't just be like, hey, mate, just do the Q&A for me. But I do think like just a final thing, just get a fresh pair of eyes of someone else who actually understands Webflow a little bit. Just have a look. I think that's really helpful. Cool. Let's move on to failure number 3, understanding the complexity of a migration.
Oh, this was horrible.
I can just tell your face is like
I still have nightmares about this. So we had this very old client that it was an e-commerce. They decided on my previous job that they wanted to migrate to Shopify because there were some limitations on Webflow. They wanted to achieve something very specific and they weren't capable of doing so on Webflow. So on Shopify, apparently they could. And so they asked us if we were able to migrate to Shopify. I had never done it myself, and I investigated just for a bit. I found a tool that could do so, and we said yes. And they had a very limited timeline. I think they were trying to go live in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It was a big site, by the way. So I started working on the migration. We said yes. The customer was happy. Okay, perfect. They provided the details. Great. They were very professional. I started working on the migration, and I realized that this tool wasn't working as I expected. It wasn't like the migration wasn't 100% working with this tool. So I had to try it several times. I finally migrated all the content over, and it wasn't looking or working properly at all. It was kind of broken. So what should have taken us like a week or so of work ended up taking us almost a month. The customer was super unhappy.
God.
They were angry by the end because it had costed them lots of money. They had everything ready to launch in like 2-3 weeks. They had to delay it. It ended up costing us money as well. We ended up not having the best relationship with them. It was a disaster. Yeah, terrible. Going back now, I should have researched more. I should have taken more time to research what this migration involved, if it was even possible to do with just a few clicks. I didn't research enough.
Oh my God.
I also should have estimated the time it would take better. So always give longer time estimate to the client than what you think it will take, just in case that, there are issues that appear or blockers.
Yeah, give a buffer.
A buffer, exactly.
Okay. Wow, lots to talk about here. I think something that is quite interesting is that when jobs come in, you want to sell the job. You want to get the job, right? And I think maybe the step before doing the research and stuff is actually just being like, we don't have the expertise to do this job. And yes, I think in the Webflow community, there are a lot of people that just say yes and work it out how to do it after, which is, I get that. Like, it's great to push yourself and stuff. But at the same time, like, it's someone's business.
Yeah.
And there's, e-commerce is a whole other ballgame, right? And I think in my experience, I don't know, I've found that doing CMS migrations from WordPress to Webflow, for example, really stressful. Like, I don't ever want to do a CMS migration again, because I had a very similar experience to you where I was just like, quick research. Yep, I can do it. Cool. Yep, I'm going to quote you big. I'll work it out after. Disaster. Like, awful. Like, I quit freelancing because of that job. I think maybe like the step before should, let's get the job and have a buffer zone and all of this stuff. Like, maybe just being like, what work should I be putting my time towards? What work do I enjoy doing? What work can I do really, really well so that I can get more of that same work? Because I would never want to do another large CMS migration again. Oh my God. Red flags all over during the client call. Said yes, even though I was like, this is going to be awful. And it was even worse than I thought. And it sounds like you had a kind of similar experience where you were just like, I don't know how to do this, and I'm going to just try and make it work, and we're just going to quote really big because there's a really short timeline and we need to work it out. But then it's like,
yeah, and it wasn't just a CMS migration in my case. It was they wanted the same designs, everything the same on Shopify. I don't know what we were thinking when we took that job. I don't know what we were thinking.
But Julieta, can you was it quite a large job, as in financially, was it quite lucrative?
Yeah, it was quite lucrative.
See, money talks. Money blinds you. It's like a beautiful person, you trust them more because they're really good looking. That doesn't mean they're trustworthy. And I think the same is true when there's like a financially, a potential big win, as it's referred to in the agency world, or at least I've heard people use that phrase, like, oh, this would be huge if we get it. It's like, no, it would be a huge fucking ball ache. But anyway, sorry. I don't know why I'm swearing so much. Maybe I've had too much coffee today, Julieta. What would you do differently now then? So you've talked about buffer zone. You've talked about should we even decide whether to do this job or not? Like maybe saying no is a better bet. Is there anything else that you're like, what have you learned from that experience? What would you advise saying to someone who's like, maybe got offered an e-commerce job and they're like, hey, how hard can it be? What would you say to them?
If I could go back, I wouldn't do a migration to Shopify. I do migrations to Webflow, but not to other platforms now. But yeah, don't just research for 10 minutes and take on such a big project. Always research well, talk to people in the community that have experienced similar things, because they can give you a better advice. And yeah, there's a very big community in Webflow that can help you as well if you ask them. And have like a buffer zone when you're giving a time estimate to the client. Always don't do like what I did, that I just said yes to such a big project that was doing 2-3 weeks. Yeah, always do that.
Great lessons there. So how would we approach learnings from failure number 3, understanding the complexity of a migration to Shopify from Webflow? And it just sounds like it was a bit of a mess, but you learned 1, buffer zone. 2, maybe don't take on the projects unless you fully want to do it, want to get referred more of that work from them, want to confident that you can provide the value that you say you can provide. But then the third one that you just talked about there, that I think is really, really powerful, is making sure that you do research before taking on a job. Maybe you've got enough skill set and information to be able to accurately tell a client whether you can do something or not, but do not just blindly say, yeah, we can do it, unless you want to have some sleepless nights moving forward.
Exactly.
Great. So we have covered a hell of a lot during this episode, loads and loads of tactical, practical things that you've shared. So thank you for sharing as vulnerably as you have. But there's one final question, which is possibly the most important question of this podcast. Are you ready? What is your next failure going to be?
That's a great question. I think my next failure is going to be, hopefully it's not, but it's going to be maybe advertising my brand and my future agency, which I'm not so good at, but I'm working on it and I will keep working on it, but I will probably have some headaches with that. Also, delegating, that might also be a big failure. I'm not so good at delegating to others, so hopefully it's not, but might be.
Well, delegating, there's actually a really good episode that, I'm just plugging my own podcast, which is maybe really sad, but Joe Krug talks a lot about delegating in, I think, episode 50 of the podcast. So definitely recommend checking that out, because he's a wise bean and he's done a lot of delegating as he's grown FinSuite. So
I will.
Yeah, it might be helpful. But if I may say, I think you're going to do amazing, because you've got the people skills, you've got the depth of skill set, having had all the problems that you've faced and overcome, and you're clearly super ambitious. Someone that has the drive and ambition to live in a completely different part of the world, to further their lifestyle and have a change of scene and all that stuff, but also a kind of strategic decision for you to make your mark out there. It is amazing. And I wish you all the best with your ventures moving forward.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me as well. Yeah,
hey,
I love Webflail and I've been following it for a while now. So
lush. That's very sweet of you. Well, I hope that this is maybe the start of you putting yourself out there more, maybe, Yeah. I'll cut some clips of this episode. Feel free to use them in your own socials and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a boost as you go forward into Qatar and setting up your own agency and doing all the amazing things that you're about to do. Julieta, thank you so much for coming on the Webflail podcast and sharing as vulnerably as you have.